We started with lessons, we started with curriculum, we built out games, and then we quickly realized the reason this isn't being taught is nobody feels confident teaching the subject. We have to train teachers. And so 11 years later, we've trained almost 20,000 teachers who've spent over 500,000 hours learning about investing, learning about credit. And so what you discover is this course doesn't only impact the students, it doesn't only impact the parents, it impacts the teachers. I think that's some of the most gratifying feedback we get from teachers. I now understand my 403B plans. I understand how to invest. I understand how to manage my credit better. Okay, so we have the curriculum, we have the professional development. What we don't have is we don't have requirements. We don't have a guaranteed course in high school curriculum. We had to set up a new organization because nonprofits can't lobby. So we went out and created this organization, NGPF Mission 2030 Fund. And I'm happy to say in the last 4 years, we've had 20 states pass laws that guarantee a high school student will take a course in personal finance. And you'll be happy to hear this. Texas was one of the latest earlier this year. And so then this is going to surprise a lot of people to hear. There are 30 states, 29, soon to be 30 states that currently guarantee this course. That represents 76% of high school students in America. So we can no longer say this isn't being taught in schools, because it is. And now really the hard work begins. And so the fourth aspect of our business is really partnering with school districts and partnering with state partners to say, let us help you implement this new course. Because ultimately, it's not about legislation, it's about implementation and making sure this is done well.
So now that teachers have the materials and there is a push for this to be included at the high school level, do you have any notes on the impact it's having on students apart from the really lovely anecdotes? Are we seeing changes in credit card applications or people being a bit more conservative with savings and so forth? Because this is a topic very near and dear to my heart, Tim.
Yeah, I think it's early days in terms of, well, let me talk about the research that has been done to date. And it basically shows higher credit scores. And so we had a consulting firm model it out, and they estimated the lifetime value of this course is $100,000. And a lot of that comes from higher credit scores, because you don't come out of the womb understanding how credit works. And so that's one of those things where if you make early mistakes, it's really hard to dig out of that hole. We also see better decisions about borrowing. So no more payday lending. They're finding lower cost ways to borrow if they need to borrow. We're seeing better decisions when it comes to financing college education, because that's, coming out of high school, that's probably the biggest decision facing them, is whether they're going to go to a 4-year college, a 2-year college, or go to trade schools, or what their path looks like. So there's research out there already that shows that it works. I think it's only going to get better. And the cool thing is we'll start to see it in national statistics, because when 3/4 of kids are getting this, now granted, it's 30% today, it's going to 76% as these states implement over time. And so you see stats already, right? That young people are starting to invest at younger ages. And now part of that is commission-free trading. Part of that is the platforms which make it really simple. And the cost of entry of investing has really gone down to $1 in many instances. And so you're seeing more, but I feel a lot more confident they're going to be making better decisions about investing.
And the great irony or paradox here is, if we don't teach kids about finance and they make poor financial decisions, then they believe capitalism and capitalism plus democracy is some sort of rigged game that they don't get to participate in, that they are victims. And what happens? Mondami, or whatever his name is in New York, and socialism sounds like a really good idea. Maybe the state, I should be a ward of the state, and they'll take care of me and they'll do a better job, because I was told I should spend $250K on my degree and then I'll get a $50K job. But mathematically, that makes no sense. And your course literally has in it paying for college, how to afford college and career, and how to earn money. There seems like there were 2 or 3 generations that were sold a false bill of goods. Is there any way to save that generation in your mind, to re-educate them?
So you're talking about millennials.
I think it's millennials, and maybe right after them, who literally went $100K, $200K into debt, price of a college education ballooned, and salary stayed the same or went up modestly and just didn't keep up. So what do you think happens to that lost generation there?
Yeah, I think the hope is they transmit those lessons to the next generation.
Okay.
Because when you've gone through that, so we did one of the states, California, the legislature passed a law last year, and the only way that happened was we were moving forward with a ballot initiative. And so we collected 890,000 signatures. And so at that point, it became obvious to the legislators that this was going to pass one way or the other. But we, as part of that process for the initiative, we did focus groups. And, we sit behind the panel and you have this trained facilitator asking people, adults, kind of about this issue. And basically, facilitator said, we've never seen this before. 24 out of 24 people thought this was a good idea. And yet, I will tell you, the emotion that I felt, and this is to your point, Jason, was regret.
That you hadn't got there sooner? Yeah.
It was regret and hope, because several of them said, we didn't get it, but certainly the next generation should.
Do you need to have a second program that is education for people 28 to 40, to grab Jason's timeline there, just to offer them the same? Is there a way to reach out to people that are not just high school students? Because I think what you're doing is super critical and amazing, but also I don't want to let those other people just suffer and die with 30% APRs.
I think what we're seeing is a couple different things. Well, number one, I'm all about focus. We got to keep our eye on the ball. The good news is our curriculum is used for adults too. And so we see a lot of nonprofit organizations working with exactly that cohort of people you're talking about. I think the other interesting phenomenon is you're starting to see companies offer this as a service, because they look at the statistics and say, my young employees are worried about money all of the time, which means they're not thinking as much about the work that they're doing. So you're starting to see more companies kind of bring this in-house as a service to young people, to say, hey, this is available to you. You didn't get this. We know you didn't get this in schools. Now let's give this to you now. Now, the key to the whole thing is, I think people often think, oh, just send them to an online course, right? And I think the magic, having taught the class and having worked with, there's 120,000 teachers who use our curriculum. The magic is what happens in the classroom. The magic is the conversation. The magic is the group projects that really stick with you when you're trying to figure out how to budget with roommates. Like, that's a fun exercise, one you won't forget, and one that's going to be handy at a young age. So I think that's the one cautionary tale here, is oftentimes people think, oh, I can just create a course. If I build it, they will come. I think it's a lot more effective when it's done with a teacher.